The Federal Reserve is hiding something from us. What is it that they're hiding, and why don't they want us to know it? This chart is on the Federal Reserve's website, and it is the all households in the United States, the checkable deposits and currencies. So it's the asset level. And what you see here is a minimum back in 2007 of about $80 billion. And then it jumps up after they started creating currency, and the government would then send that to everybody in the form of checks and assistance to businesses and stuff. It peaked at almost $4.5 trillion. So from 80 billion to $4.5 trillion. But it's been declining now. This is from Q3 of 2022 to Q3 of 2023, and we should have the data pretty soon now for Q4 of 2023. So it's been declining now for more than a year. Now, I went into this in quite a bit of depth in my book, The Great Gold and Silver Rush of the 21st Century, and this is one of the online chapters. There are two that you can get for free online. This is Chapter 4, The Scene of the Crime. Give a man a gun and he can rob a bank, but give a man a bank and he can rob the world. And this chapter is broken up into several parts. It's a long chapter. It's the hardest chapter to get in the book, the hardest chapter to absorb and understand. And it's online so that I can keep on tweaking it and rewriting it and making it easier and update the charts, which is something I would like to do, but I can't, and I'm going to show you why. In Part 6, Reverse Robin Hoods, I talk about the Federal Reserve. And this is the chart here. And you'll notice the source is the Federal Reserve, so it's their data. It's the checkable deposits owned by the, we said poorest 50%, but the bottom 50%. And it's gone up 26 times from 2007 to Q2 of 2022. And so then, and I'd like to update that, but I can't, and I'll show you why in a minute. Then I took that chart and I squeezed it way down so I could fit another line on it. And here we have the original chart is this blue line, and here I've added the richest 1% on top of it, and their wealth has gone up 111 times since then. Not their wealth, their checkable deposits. Then I show the result of this as far as a share of checkable deposits owned by the top 10%, the bottom 90%. And what you see is since the introduction of Bernankenomics, the new method of economics that Ben Bernanke sort of imposed on us, the entire world basically, with the global financial crisis of 2008. When that crisis started, the bottom 90%, so if you take 10 people, you've got 9 people here, 1 person there. So if you take the bottom 90%, 9 out of every 10 persons shared about 54% of all of the deposits between those 9 people. That has now dropped to 33%. The 1 person out of every 10 owned about 46% of the deposits, and that has now gone to 66%. This person did not steal it from these people. What happened was Bernankenomics is responsible for a fraud and a theft. It snuck into your bank account and into the assets that you own, and it transferred that wealth from you to these people secretly, without anybody seeing it. You have to understand how currency is created and how quantitative easing works to be able to see this. So now let's go back to that first chart that I showed, checkable deposits and currency. And the asset level peaked in Q3 of 2022, and it's been falling ever since. Now this is made up of all of these different aggregates. So you've got the bottom 50%, you've got the next 50% from 50 to 90, and then you've got from 90 to 99, and so on. And you'll notice this stops in Q3 of 2023. We've aggregated all of those different wealth percentiles into this one chart. Now let's go and take a look at the Federal Reserve's current data for all of the different aggregates, the components of this. And that is on this search on the Federal Reserve's website, the percent of aggregate. So it's the share of checkable deposits, top 1%, bottom 50%, top 0.1, 50th to 90th, and so on. So here is the top 1%. And one of the things you'll notice is that this is just a moonshot. It is going up like crazy, and it stops in Q1 of 2022. Now, the chart that has all of these aggregated together stops in Q3 of 2023. So you've got Q1 of 2022, Q2, Q3, Q4, Q1 of 2023, Q2, Q3. So they are now 6 quarters behind on reporting this. They've ignored the last 6 updates. Why? They have this data. They're just not showing it to us for some reason. But notice how this is a moonshot. Well, next, this is the top 1%. Let's go down to the 90th to 99th percentile. It's another moonshot, but it's got a slightly different angle to it. Now this one, instead of stopping in Q1, stops in Q2, so they reported 1 more quarter. But still, that's 5 reports that they have suppressed. They've missed them or suppressed them, but it's 5 quarters that they're not revealing data that they have. And then let's go down to the 50th to 90th percentile. And what we see is another change in the direction of this. So the rate of acceleration was slowing down back in Q2 of 2022. Now let's go to the bottom 50%, and oh, something new here. This actually peaked in Q1 of 2022, and by Q2 of 2022, it had actually fallen. So for the bottom 50, you know, Robert Kiyosaki used to say that when it comes to, you know, if you're poor, it isn't how much you make that is what is making you poor. It's how you spend your currency. He called it money. I call it currency. But it's how you spend your currency, because, you know, I've had employees and stuff. The minute I pay them, they spend everything. It is gone. And that's just a poor person's mentality. So Q2 of 2022, this was already descending, and they've missed 5 reports. Now, I think what is going on here, the reason they're not showing it, they're not revealing all of this, is because that top 1% and the top 10%, they continued to accelerate for quite some time, and they may still be accelerating, whereas this bottom 50%, and probably, you know, there's probably some reduction all the way to the bottom 90%, but this bottom 50%, it's probably close to being gone, if not all gone. Now, that means that the Federal Reserve's inflation targets, they're saying that inflation could slow down and sort of go away. Well, inflation affects different sectors of the economy. There's the retail inflation at the grocery store and the gas pump, and that might slow down. But the inflation of certain assets will probably, if the top 10% have rising assets, rising checkable deposits still, that's going to go somewhere someday. And all they have to do is get scared, and it suddenly goes into safe haven assets. The inflation will be very sensitive to what this bottom 50%, the bottom 90%, what they have. If that's being depleted, then inflation will slow down because they're not spending as much. Now, do I have any data to support my conclusion that my belief, my proposal here, that this bottom 50, that the Fed is hiding this because the bottom percentiles here are spending their currency and it's running out, and so they won't have as much to spend? Well, I've got some anecdotal evidence. This is not solid evidence. However, credit card delinquencies on the delinquency rate on credit card loans on banks not among the 100 largest is now at record highs, So for smaller banks, there is no time in history, and this chart goes back to the beginning of 1991, that people have been as leveraged out on their credit cards. So if these are credit cards that are issued by the smaller banks, this is probably higher risk people that are represented by that bottom 50%. So I think that is what's happening, and that's the reason the Federal Reserve is not disclosing it. So I want to remind you a little bit about Bernankenomics. He said, Ben Bernanke said, in June 2007, the subprime crisis will not affect the economy overall. I just want to leave you with this truth that Ben Bernanke, the guy that created this system that steals wealth from 9 out of every 10 people and gives it to that one other person that was already super wealthy to begin with. I just want to leave you with this. Thanks for watching.